I think we're going to talk about my way versus God's way. It says in the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verses 13. Philippians 2:13. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. God has a purpose and a plan, does he not? And if you argue with that, then I'm going to point you back to this scripture and a whole lot of other ones. God has a plan for you individually. He has a plan for your church, every church congregation that meets around this nation. God has an intention. He has a purpose. He has a plan. And it's real easy for us in our own personal lives to say, nope, I'm going to do it my way. Dave wrote a song about it a long time ago, right? I did it my way. It didn't work out so good doing it their own way for many people. It's God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. So we're going to talk this morning about Moses, and I'll try not to call him Noah too many times. You remember the last time, and I kept mixing their names up because I was trying to talk about two guys in the same sermon. But I tried to leave Noah out of it this time, so I wouldn't. So, I'm going to start with Exodus chapter 2. We're not going to read straight through two whole chapters, but I want to start with Exodus chapter 2, and we'll start with verse 11 and 12. But I want to give a little bit of a backstory so anybody that is in this room's not up to date on it. Moses' family came about in Egypt because of Joseph, who ended up there as a slave himself, began to be the number 2 ruler because God was working in him and through him. And that's a whole nother example of how God works out his purpose and his plan in the face of yucky stuff. So God worked it all out. This entire nation grew up inside of another nation. But God had already made promises to their forefathers. He had said, I'm going to give you this land over here. It's flowing with milk and honey. He had told Abraham and those guys, and your descendants are going to be so numerous, they'll be more numerous than the stars, you know. So God had a plan already in place for this nation who kind of, by way of evilness, ends up in the land of Egypt. And as they grew into this nation, the nation of Egypt makes them all slaves. I was pondering on that this morning, how that must feel to be owned. To be owned. But yet here we are, many of us, we're really and truly, we're slaves. We're owned by some other God, by something else. Sure enough, we get owned, and it has our breakfast for us, so to speak. And to be owned, that's the way these people were. They were owned. They were told where to go, when to go, what to do, how much food they could have, how much work they needed to do, the whole 9 yards, where they could live, how many animals they were allowed to own, have to consume, everything. They were owned by the nation of Egypt. So along comes a time where they wanted to cast out a lot of the male babies between certain age to kill them all, to control the population, so to speak. And Moses' mother bore him. And when he was about 3 months old, the Bible says that she knows he was a beautiful child. And just want to say, he could have been his arms on backwards, and she would have thought he was a beautiful child. She would have. But she decided she would save her baby, so she, at 3 months old, creates a little basket, coats it with pitch or whatever, puts him in it, wraps him up, puts him in the reeds next to the edge of the river. And then her daughter, who was a slave too, goes down and kind of coerces Pharaoh's daughter. As Pharaoh's daughter finds him, says, let's be suggestive here, this woman. Hey, I know a lady who could nurse him. And she's like, well, go get her. So God worked it out. Moses' mother got to nurse him. That's pretty cool. God is an awesome God. He's all-knowing God. And even in the midst of our own yuckiness, God works. God's always working, y'all, all the time. And so, we pick up there. Moses grew up in the household of that Pharaoh. He grew up there. Apparently having some knowledge of who he was or what nationality he was. It says one day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. After that, he fled to Midian because he had been discovered that he had killed this Egyptian. And Pharaoh was trying to kill him. And it says, in the scriptures, it says he fled to Midian. And there he met his wife. He ended up tending sheep of his father-in-law, Jethro. And Darlene and I discovered last night that he had several names he was given in the Bible. But we'll call him Jethro. But he met and married his wife, and she bore him a son, and he managed his father-in-law's flock. And it says in verse 22 of Exodus 2, Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. I added that verse for this reason. The Bible describes us as jars of clay, or our body as a tent. We're just passing through here. You know that, right? We're just passing through. Eternity's a long time. The time we spend here is just a little tiny dot, a little drop. That's all it is. We're passing through. We're foreigners in a foreign land. So get that in your mind and in your heart that you are foreigners in a foreign land. It doesn't matter where your house is, you're a foreigner. It doesn't matter what country you live in, you're a foreigner in a foreign land. Because God created us for eternity. He did. So, in chapter 2, verse 23, it goes on, during that long period, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God hearing their groaning, and God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. So we'll stop there. God is always, he is never resting. He is always working. Did y'all know that? God is always working. I hope you do, because I done said it a whole bunch of times in the last month. And I'm going to say it a whole bunch of times more. God is always working. Imagine the most discombobulated, mixed up, messed up circumstances that you could think of that you may find yourself in or have been through, or some situation you know of with other people that you've heard about. Even in those situations, God is always working. He's always working, even in those yucky times. You know, when things are good, we're like, kumbaya, yay. Yay, Jesus, look at you go. You know, and we're all about cheering him on when things are going the way we imagine they ought to go. But when things go south, and they often do, and I'm the guiltiest in the room, I start trying to figure out how can I do it? How can I fix it? How can I make it better? What can I change? How can I change me to make it better? What can I, and I just constantly work on it all the time in my own mind, and I forget to stop and look and see, is God working right here, right now, in this yucky stuff situation? You imagine how Moses must have felt. He had to have had a love for Mr. Pharaoh's daughter, because she raised him. She kept him safe from the edict that Pharaoh had given out about his age group males being killed. I mean, she had raised him, made sure he had everything he needed. He must have loved her, and he must have loved his real mother, because she nursed him till he was weaned at least. But obviously he didn't have to even go do the slavery part. But there he was, all of a sudden he sees a brother, a Hebrew brother, being beaten by an Egyptian, and he gets riled up, and he decides, here's how I'm going to fix this situation. Instead of looking at the big picture, the big situation, he looked at that moment in that time, that tiny situation that seemed really big in his mind, so much that he consciously murdered a man. It says he looked to and he looked fro, and then he went and kills this dude and buries him in the dirt. So he understood what he was doing. He understood his guilt. He tried to fix it his own way. He tried to do something about it his way. We're guilty of that, right? We're all toting that burden where we do it our way. We do it our way. But God's always working. Even in our yucky, foolish decisions, even in the bad decisions, God works anyway, because he's God. He's the creator. So there's Moses tried to fix it himself, and God takes that situation and begins to work in it. And Moses flew off out into the wilderness. He goes to a place called Midian. And he sits down by a well, and there he sees some beautiful young ladies come up with a flock of animals. And he sees some shepherds being mean to them, wouldn't let them water. So he decides he would water them for them, and he rescued them from them shepherds. And they go home and they tell Jethro, Dad, he asked them, why are y'all home so early? He said, Dad, this Egyptian guy came along. See, Pharaoh was probably dressed like an Egyptian. So they said this Egyptian guy came along and he rescued us, and so he watered our animals. He's like, well, where's the dude at? Bring him home. So they went and got him, and he agreed to stay with them. In turn, Jethro gives him one of his daughters. Her name is Zipporah. It says in 2:24, God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And then in verse 25 of chapter 2, so God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. He was concerned about them. So God began to work even in Moses' rebellion and murder and fleeing and all of that. God began to work. God was already working in front of Moses. He was already there. He was already in Midian. He was already working out situations and things that were going to fall in place so that Moses would meet the love of his life here on earth, that Moses would meet his beautiful wife, that Moses would have a son, that Moses would have a means to live until God sent him on a mission. God was already working. If you don't hear anything else today, know this: God is already, He isn't working just now. He's already working. He's already working, and whatever you got to face that you haven't even seen yet, He's already there. That gives me goosebumps to think God's already there. And whatever yuck that I got to face next week, next year, next month, next decade, God is already working in that situation. God worked it out so Moses could meet these people and that they would become part of his life. And you'll see down through Moses' story how Jethro gave him advice and all kind of stuff. His wife saved his life from God. Y'all know God was about to kill Moses one time? Just read in them 2 chapters. You'll find out about it. We won't talk about all that today. God was already working. And the cool part is, He had concern for His people. Now, if He loved them that way, and He loved me in the way of Jesus shed His perfect blood for me, then I got to settle into the fact that He has concern for me. He saw that Perry was a slave. He sees that Perry has a tendency to be a slave to something other than him. He sees that about you too, and He has concern for you. He has concern for that person that you're going to share the gospel with, where He's already working and you hadn't seen it yet. He has concern for that person. Y'all did hear me. Somebody you're going to share the gospel with. Not somebody you're going to send your pastor to share the gospel with. Somebody you're going to tell what Jesus did for you. God is already there. He has concern for that person, and He's working it out right now. He's working it out. So don't blink. Don't blink. It says now in Exodus 3:1, now Moses was tending to the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that the bush was on fire, and it did not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look at it, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. He said, do not come any closer. God, do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. And then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Here's Moses out here doing his son-in-law duties. He's tending to his father-in-law's flock, and he comes up on a bush, and it's being burned and burned and burned, but never consumed. And God starts to speak to him. When's the last time you heard God's voice? I believe that you can hear God's voice every single day. Whenever you get in His Word and you start praying about God's Word and you read it and you know it and you study it and you pray over it and You read it and you know it and you study it and you pray over it, and before long God begins to bend your heart in this direction or that, and there'll be something you become passionate about. And one thing you'll become passionate about is hearing the next thing he said. But after a while, you'll begin to gain eyes. You'll begin to gain spiritual eyes and begin to see where God is at work. You'll begin to see God working. You'll begin to see that bush burning, so to speak. You'll begin to see it. It'll become obvious to you. Yeah, this is a terrible situation, but look at the opportunity that's right there. You'll begin to see it. But what I find interesting, I preached this before, and I'm going to preach it again. God called, y'all think about this, he's in the wilderness. He's in the wilderness. It's probably hot out there. And you know, I pictured the old Moses movie where they show him out and there's rock and the bushes on the rock. What was that guy's name that did that acting? Yeah, Charlton Heston. And they show it out, but I imagine him out there and the sand is hot. And he tells him, take off his shoes. The most important thing he had on his body, God wanted him to get rid of. Y'all, he wanted him to get rid of a valuable thing. I think there's a time, and I think the time is now for us to throw off those valuable things. It even tells us to take off the old and put on the new over in the New Testament. It tells us to throw off that old. No, he's telling us, take off your shoes. Take off your shoes, your spiritual, what's valuable to you. Get rid of your idols. Get rid of everything you think is more important than God. Now, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that my wife, if I've made her more important than God, I ought to get rid of her? No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not at all what I'm saying. I will never get rid of Darlene. Never, never. We made a promise before we got married that we would never get unmarried. And then when we got married, we made that promise again. So here we are, 33 years later almost, and we're still married. So, I think that's pretty cool. That's not what he's saying. I got to make God more important to me than even Darlene. He's got to be more important. He's got to be more important than my salary. He's got to be more important to me than my prestige or the way people look at me or any of that. He's got to be the single most important entity in my life. He's the one that I should fear with a deep respect. He tells him to take off his shoes. Get rid of that important thing for a minute, Moses. We're going to talk. I got something for you to do. Moses gained a respect for his majesty, for his Lord, right then and there that day. He took off his shoes, and then it says in verse 6 of chapter 3, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. At this Moses hid his face and was afraid to look at God. He gained a deep, deep respect for God. How many times, how much do we do in our lives where we just flippantly write God off in this situation or that? Well, God will let me by with this. Or that's no big deal. I'll go on down the road. I don't see that going on, and I'm not going to help right now. You know, and the situations could be multiple, all kind of different situations where we decide what we want, how we want to go, what we want to do. That becomes more important than what God is calling us to do. We've lost our deep respect for God. I believe this nation has lost its deep respect for an almighty majesty God. I am is what he called himself. But I want you to notice this. You can come up with some really cool ministry ideas. You can come up with some really cool I can fix it ideas. If that's not what God's working in your life, then you're not in the right place. You're not doing the right thing. It's God who takes the initiative. It says in verse 8 of chapter 3, God says, so I have come down to rescue them. He had told them that I told Moses again in verse 7 that he was concerned about their suffering. And he said, so I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. It's God who takes the initiative. It's God who's going to begin to do that work. And when you're in touch with him spiritually, we kind of talked about this last week some. When you're connected with God, when you're in his word, when you're in prayer with him, and you're praying back to him his word, and all these kind of things, and he begins to stir your heart, he's already working. It don't matter where you look at, what you look at, he's working. God is working. And what'll happen is you begin to gain these spiritual eyes to see it, but it's God who took the initiative. So we can approach any situation with confidence. The Bible teaches us to be confident. And we can approach it with confidence because we know the Creator was there. And he's the one who took the initiative. And God goes on in verse 10 and he says, so now go, tell Moses, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. See, God already knew that Moses had a stirring about those people. He just had it the wrong way. Moses wanted to fix it himself, and it didn't work out. God's telling Moses, okay, now let's do it my way. Let's do it my way. Imagine had Moses left that moment and decided, before he met God at the burning bush, and decided, I'm going to muster up a few thousand men, and I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to whoop them Egyptians. I want to ask you this, and Blackaby asked this in this Experience in God book. How many people does it record that died at the hand of the Egyptians when they were fleeing Egypt? How many people died? None. Okay, if Moses had went and mustered his own army and went and crossed over there and went and decided, I'm going to whoop them, how many people do you think would have died? Probably all of them. Pharaoh had at the time one of the greatest armies on earth. How many Egyptian army people died in that whole event? We're going to assume his whole army died in the Red Sea, right? And I brought that up before that, there's some people out there say, where they crossed, the water wasn't 3 feet deep. That's pretty miraculous that God could drown an entire Egyptian army in 3 feet of water. So God's a miraculous God. I don't care how you want to slice it. Had Moses went and did it, let's think about it, what would have happened? Mo and all of his buddies probably would have got slain. The Egyptian army would have got bonuses or whatever they got for killing that many people. And the nation of Israel would have been where? Still in Egypt. Still making bricks. It's God who initiates the work. I said last week, we can pull up alongside of God in our car and say, God, get in. I'm going this way. Now work it out where we get there. Or we can say, wait, God, let me get in your car and go with you. Let me go with you, God. May you take me where I need to go. So we can make up our minds here today before a holy God. We can make up our minds. God, don't matter where you are in your life. God, I want to go with you. I don't want you to fit into my plans. I want to fit into yours. I want to go with you, God. It says in verse 12, and God said, I will be with you, and this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. God's making him a guarantee. This mountain we're at right now, when you bring people back here, you're going to worship God right here. And you're going to remember that I'm the one who did it, not you. It was my idea. But I want you to know this. If it's God's plan, he will provide. God confidently told Moses, you will worship here. In other words, anything you need between there and here, I'm going to provide it because you're going to worship me right here. And they did. They did. They came back and they worshiped God right there. More than once. More than once. And Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you're to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. I am has sent you. It's by faith that Moses is in heaven today. It's by faith that he brought those people out of Israel. It's by faith in one named Jesus that he did that. And Jesus said in John 14:6, I read it last week. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. I am was in the desert when he was talking to Moses in a burning bush, and I am was there whenever he was hanging on the cross and shedding his perfect blood. And whenever you surrender your life to Jesus, I am was already there. He was already there. God's always working. He was there. I am is Jesus. Y'all know that, right? If you don't, you do now. So he says, you tell them Jesus sent you. I am Yahweh, the all-inclusive, ever-engulfing, consuming God. I could stand here and describe him all day with wonderful words and never exhaust what that means, what I am means. He's that big. So, in your life, do you see God working? Do you see him working? And if you've seen him working, have you joined him yet? There's more to it than getting up on Sunday and coming to church. God's got you in the places he's got you connected with the people he has you connected with for a reason. And you might think, now we're going to revisit this today because I talked about it last week. You might think I'm just a little old me. And you may be only connected to a few little people. And you may not even be outspoken. And that person that you're connected to might not be a very significant person at all. They might even be a homeless person. They might be a meth head, a crack head, whatever it is. They might be just a regular worker on the production line or whatever it is. Somebody that changes tires on a car, whatever it is. Somebody that cleans the restrooms in a restaurant. Or they might be somebody really big and important, but I'm here to tell you, God's already working in their life. God is already working in their life. And he has concern for them. I know, because we just saw the character of God in this passage. That's God's character. One of them is that he's concerned. And if he's concerned, you can know if that person is insignificant and he's already there and he's already working in their life, even in their yucky situation, and all I got to do is pay attention and join God in it. And if God's already there, then even though that seems like a big, insignificant thing, it's really a big, God-sized thing. It's a big deal. It's really God's size. It really is. It's important. So don't think yourself or your situation as being insignificant. Like, what can I do? I'm no theologian. I'm no pastor. I'm not even a Sunday school teacher. Whatever it is that you may come up with, Moses come up with all that baloney. You know, that he had this excuse and that one. If God's already there and he's already working, then it's a big deal. And if you get to join him in it, then you got to see God-sized stuff happen. I remember praying with a pastor across the street every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 5 o'clock. And I would get in there and I'd pray, God, I want to see God-sized stuff happen in this community. And the whole time I'm praying that, there's God-sized stuff happening in this community, and I was too spiritually blind to see it. Because all I wanted to do was see what I wanted, not what God was already doing. So I want you to leave here today. I want you to commit to God. God, I'm going to spend time with you. And I want you to open my spiritual eyes and cause me to quit making it about me and make it about you. That's simple enough, right?